Today we're here about the nightmare of being sex trafficked as a child.
And the increasing role that classified advertising websites play in selling underage girls. I'm Malika Bilal.
I'm Femi Okay, and you're in the stream.
This is the United States. There's no possible way this is true.
I sent her out with one of her friends, and she didn't come back.
Next thing you know, boom. She brought her into a life of hell.
It was like shopping on Amazon.
You're just a product.
Well, the most popular internet site for escorts is called Backpage.com, where authorities say underage girls are sold for sex.
Backpage is the Walmart of human trafficking.
This is a very important case.
Are these people wholesaling children in Washington State or not?
What if it was your daughter? How would you feel then?
That's a preview of the upcoming documentary film, I Am Jane Doe, which premieres next month in the United States. Once in the clutches of a pimp or an accomplice, a young girl can be listed, bought and sold online within 24 hours.
Backpage.com and other companies like it have evaded legal action under the Communications Decency Act. That's a U.S. law that says website owners are not responsible for content posted by users. We asked Backpage.com to join our show, and they declined to give us a representative.
So how does a child become the victim of online sex trafficking, and who should be held accountable? With us to talk about this, Mary Marcio is director of I Am Jane Doe and the founder of 50 Eggs, an independent film production company, and she's in the US state of Massachusetts. Kubiki Pride is the mother of one of the trafficked girls in the documentary. Her daughter was missing for 9 months. She's in Atlanta, Georgia. Brooke Axtell is a child sex trafficking survivor and the founder and director of She Is Rising, a healing community for women and girls overcoming rape, abuse and sex trafficking. And she joins us from Austin, Texas. And Elizabeth Brown is here in our studio, and she's an associate editor of Reason magazine. It is good to have you here, everybody. Mary, when you worked out that you wanted to tell this story in a documentary, what was it? What was the shock factor that just leapt out at you that made you want to share this with anybody who was also interested?
Well, I read about several Jane Does from Boston, my hometown, Jane Doe 1, 2, and 3, that were ages 13 to 15 when they were sold online and advertised on Backpage for commercial sex. These children filed suit, and I read about this for the first time in the Boston Globe, and I remember thinking, child sex trafficking, that happens here in the United States. And the more I learned about this crime, I was shocked at the breadth and the scope of the numbers of children that were victimized. And to be quite frank, Femi, I was embarrassed at how little I knew about this issue and how pervasive and hidden this human rights violation it actually is in this country.
Kubiki, I want to show our viewers this beautiful picture of your daughter. We're going to call her M.A. She's called M.A. in the documentary, and she is a stunning girl. This is sometime later, you and your daughter, after she went missing, and then you found her. How did you find her?
I actually found her on Backpage, Backpage.com. She was listed for sale for sex with men.
And she was how old?
She was 14 at the time that I found her. She was 13 initially when she left home.
Let me just show everybody what Backpage looks like. It's like a classified ad site here. And you found her in the adult section. The idea of a mum having to go through and look for her daughter this way is very sobering. Malika, what do you have?
There's a tweet here from someone who actually thought like you, Mary, before you did the documentary. So this is PJ, who says, actual sex trafficking is rare in modern countries. You need a sustainable population of vulnerable women to prey on. So that's one person whose mind we might change by the end of this. But there is an answer from someone online. This is someone who says, yes, but the internet has made it easier as one is easily accesses demand and supply. It's all right there. Brooke, can you explain for our audience who may not be aware how easy has the internet made it? What does that look like?
Well, to address the first comment, there was a study that was released just today from the University of Texas at Austin sponsored by the governor's office. And over a 2-year period, they mapped out the prevalence of child sex trafficking in the state of Texas alone. They found that 73,000 children are trafficked into the sex trade every year in our state alone. And we are just beginning to document the prevalence of this in our nation. We are a developed nation, and the illusion of privilege and affluence for many of these young women does not apply. They are simply groomed and exploited, some within 24 hours of meeting their perpetrator. And in my work with She Is Rising, I have sat with women and girls, some very young teens who within a short period of time of meeting their trafficker were posted on Backpage, who were forced to perform sex acts, who were given quotas, who were gang raped, who were subjected to the worst forms of exploitation. And so I think it's a common myth that this isn't prevalent here. It's prevalent because there is a demand for it.
Let me just show you a little clip from the documentary I Am Jane Doe. This is a former customer who used Backpage, and he explained how he used it, how easy it is. Have a look.
It was easy to use Backpage because you're sitting alone at home at your own leisure. It was almost like shopping on Amazon.
One of our plaintiffs told us, people used to order me on Backpage as easily as you can order a pizza.
Elizabeth, when you see that and people say, it's the internet, if it wasn't on this Backpage, if it wasn't on the website, if it wasn't online, then that would help. That would have helped M.A., the young daughter of Kubiki. That would have helped her. That definitely would have helped. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think it's important to remember that. I mean, it's really hard to talk to people who have such horrific stories because obviously I feel for them and I feel for what they have had to go through. But, you know, and a lot of times when people talk from the position that I'm in, people will say, oh, you're just trying to defend, you know, some abstract principles of the First Amendment, free speech, or trying to defend this shadowy website. But I just want to state up front that, you know, I actually am not here to defend Backpage. I am here arguing on behalf of the exploited women and children and all, people of all genders who will be harmed by policies that I think people that are against Backpage are advocating. So I just wanted to stress that up front and say that, you know, when people talk about if it wasn't happening on Backpage, we've watched it. The government has gone after, in the United States, various websites. This is about the 5th website that it's gone after in the same way. Mm-hmm. And each time, the ads do just migrate to a different site. Right. Because, I mean, unless you are going to extensively police all of the internet, then there's no way to really, you know,
and let me just show, let me just go back here to Backpage.com. So right now, if you look under their adult section, it says censored, 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 censored. Let me just click on that. And then it says censored. There's something that you actually wrote, which was quite interesting, which is here. Backpage shutters adult ads section following years of government bullying. The government bullying bit was the bit that gave me pause. Mary?
I'd like to just jump in, and I appreciate Elizabeth's perspective, but we need to remember we're not talking about the First Amendment. We're talking about Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which has been interpreted to be an immunization, if you will, of websites hosting third-party content. This has absolutely nothing to do with the First Amendment. Section 230 really is, it's a protection that new media companies, online website owners enjoy. However, old media owners do not enjoy the protection of Section 230. So Al Jazeera broadcast, it may be the New York Times.
But all of their websites enjoy the protection of Section 230. Their comments would be...
230, let me finish, Elizabeth. What 230 does, it's just a summary judgment. It means that a company can avoid a lawsuit. It is not a litigation of free speech at all. And I think the policies that Elizabeth is alluding to, all these children want to do is litigate whether an online operator is responsible for online harm. To date, there has been very little responsibility, but we're now seeing the Facebook fake news crisis. This is now 20 years later. Technology has accelerated so quickly that our legal framework has not kept up. That's what this case is about. And to what extent do online portals bear responsibility, particularly if they're
Mary
profiting?
Elizabeth, I want to throw two perspectives in here, kind of representing your two different views here. Taha on Twitter says, any website remotely affiliated with sex trafficking should be shut down and its owner should be prosecuted immediately. It seems sort of like a no-brainer. It seems pretty easy enough. Why that doesn't happen, though, is elucidated in this video comment we got from Daniel Pryor. Have a listen.
Holding sites like Backpage accountable for third-party content undermines internet freedom. It tramples on the First Amendment. It screws over sex workers, and it undermines anti-trafficking efforts. The free speech aspect of this debate centers on Section 230, a 1996 law passed by Congress that protects websites from liability for third-party content. Without this law, you could see people suing Twitter for hosting illegal tweets, and it's easy to see why that isn't desirable and why it amounts to censorship.
I think it's also important to remember also that, you know, sex trafficking is illegal in the United States. There is no federal law against prostitution, but anyone under 18 who is involved in prostitution is defined as a sex trafficking victim, whether or not there's any force, fraud, or coercion. So it's important to note that. And also under federal law in the United States, advertising of a sex trafficking victim is already illegal, as is soliciting sex or patronizing a sex trafficking victim. So when people say we should have a law against this, we do have a law against all of this conduct explicitly.
Let me just bring in...
And the law
that's actually not true.
Ladies, I know you all got something to say, but let me just go to Kibiki first. Kibiki, you go ahead.
Okay. My biggest thing what I'm not understanding is why you keep on, or why everyone keeps on saying all of these things about the technical sense, and they're not getting to the point that children, not 18-year-olds, not 17-year-olds, we're talking about from the range of 18 all the way down to sometimes 11. We're talking about children being sold on a site. And then I think the biggest thing that people are not understanding is that Backpage is assisting in creating the ads. That is what makes them a part of the crime. Had they let the people just post the ads and then they went ahead and worked with law enforcement, then I think that would have been something that I could have understood. But the fact that they are assisting in creating the ads, that's just like me going and picking up a kid, and then you, Christine, putting that kid in a very sexually explicit outfit, and then me going out and selling that kid.
There's actually no evidence that they have helped assist create those ads, though. In the Senate report, the Senate report that just came out, the Senate report that just came out said that they have not manually edited a single ad since 2012, and even before then, that they manually edited ads for prostitution, not for anything that involved people underage. The Senate report explicitly says that.
Elizabeth, ladies, let me just reference what Elizabeth is talking about. There was a Senate hearing. The first one, Backpage, they didn't turn up. They were subpoenaed, they didn't turn up. That was unheard of for 20 years. So then they were made to turn up. Let me show you just a little clip of that hearing when they were made to turn up. Have a listen to this.
Backpage deliberately edited out words indicative of child sex trafficking. Fresh, innocent, schoolgirl, and even Amber Alert.
Those children were still sold. Shame on you. Shame on you for hiding behind the First Amendment.
If an underage girl is being sold for sex and her pimp puts the word Lolita in the advertisement, stripping that term out of the ad doesn't magically change the girl's age, does it?
I decline to answer your question.
I decline to answer your question.
I decline to answer your question.
Based on the rights provided by the First and Fifth Amendments.
So Elizabeth, they wouldn't answer the question. They weren't when they said, "Did you edit this? Did you do this? Did you do this?" They wouldn't
that's
answer
a legal
the question.
strategy because they're not on trial here, and they are on trial in California. So to sort of, give their strategy away in advance here.
I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. And you said they didn't do this. They said we're not talking about it.
Right.
So I don't feel that you can speak on their behalf.
Well, the Senate report this panel that we just watched was in conjunction with a 20-month investigation and a 50-something page report that they put out. And the Senate report directly says they have not manually edited ads since 2012. It says when they found these ads, they stripped them out, and then the ads went to a person who reviewed them. They interviewed several people who were employees of Backpage and did the ads, and they said, yes, sometimes we let ads about prostitution through. We never let ads with the underage people through. This is in the report that panel put out.
Always let ads
Elizabeth,
for
we had an opportunity.
Through, and they are very often letting ads with children through, as in my child, as in other children that I have seen posted on that site. I think that you're looking at it completely the wrong way.
All right, I'm looking at what the Senate
think,
put out.
Elizabeth, one other note. We interviewed ex-Backpage moderators, and one moderator in particular said that they personally witnessed an ad for an underage child at least once a week, and that ad would.
And they report hundreds. They report hundreds of ads a month to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Backpage works with law enforcement. They report suspected underage people to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They turn over financial records and email addresses for people who post the ads to law enforcement. So, I mean, they've actually, when they find this, they don't just try to cover it up. They try to actually help and stop this. They don't want it to happen either.
Let
I want to
tell
jump
you
in here because I want to bring in our online community. They're watching this conversation as it's happening, and I want to bring their voice into this. So this is one person on Twitter who says the non-publisher loophole that we've all just been discussing here, that was created by this act, should not apply in this case so long as Backpage and other sites like this take it upon themselves to edit or modify, whatever the case may be. The person goes on to say, surely that gave them a sense of legal protection that allowed for these acts, but they acted as co-publishers. So that's one person's perspective in all of this. Another person who sent us a video comment talks about where people who post these ads might migrate to if pages like this are shut down. This is Jim Kelly. Have a listen.
In the past 9 months, we have provided residential care and services to over 50 victims of human trafficking. And 50% of those victims were advertised, bought, and sold on Backpage. A couple of weeks ago, we heard the great news that Backpage had closed down their escort service due to pressure from the Justice Department, only to learn 3 or 4 days later that they closed down the escort service and moved the ads all to the personal section. It is time for us as a country to say no more. We are not going to allow our children to be bought and sold. It's time for Backpage as a total entity to be closed.
So Brooke, Jim works with homeless youth in New Orleans, United States. What do you make of his comment that we need to do away with all of these sites?
I appreciate him sharing the perspective of someone who is working directly with victims who sees the devastating impact of this trauma. The reality is that Backpage has adapted, edited, and passed through third-party content that is responsible for generating revenue off of human trafficking and modern-day slavery. And it's their responsibility to create a solution, greater measures for verification of identity, protocols for intervening, and protections for young people. At this time, they're not able to do that. And so legally and ethically, they have a responsibility to shut their own site down and stop hiding behind the rhetoric of free speech while silencing the voices of the countless children who have been bought and sold on their sites. I have listened to far too many stories from young women and girls who have had their lives ripped apart because in such a short amount of time, they can be posted as a commodity, they can be turned out for profit. And while these girls will spend a lifetime recovering from trauma, the CEO of Backpage and those who benefit financially will reap the rewards of this exploitation.
A lot of the, we see the same things that are happening on Backpage happen. You see cops conducting stings, sex trafficking and prostitution stings on Facebook. You see them now doing it through Snapchat. When Backpage closed, everyone was saying, oh, I guess now everyone's going to advertise on Instagram. So are you saying that we should go after all of these sites in the same way?
I'm saying that until the website providers can.
Well, these other sites haven't sufficiently shut this down either, or else the cops wouldn't routinely be able to conduct stings that way.
Elizabeth, so what happens if you,
Kubiki, say that again. Sorry, I didn't quite hear that. Say that one more time.
That is the reason why the CDA needs to be changed.
That's what I'm just curious. So you would go after
do
Snapchat and
with
Facebook and
the First
Instagram and all of these sites.
Kubiki, how would you like the law to be amended? Okay.
Ma'am?
Yeah.
So these forms of communication are not necessarily serving as active marketplaces for illicit industries.
They are. They are. There have been.
That is
they are not posting
where
pictures and price tags.
The police routinely use them for stings.
Let me show you something, ladies. Let me show you something. This was bundled up when Backpage went into their Senate hearing, and they were saying, look, the police know and the detectives know to come and look at Backpage. Let me show you the support they said they are getting from the law enforcement community. Thank you. I appreciate your proactive efforts to protect our children. This one is quite dramatic. These posts are of a juvenile, and your response aided in her recovery last night. She's been missing for more than a year. They can now be removed. That was from the FBI in Cleveland. Malika, what do you have?
I want to shift the focus just a little bit, because when we look into how do you tackle this problem, there are a couple different answers. This is Tawan on Twitter, who says the handler needs to be prosecuted, yet that person's not the culprit, it's the buyer. Econ 101, decrease demand and supply increases. Another person who's tweeted in a lot on this topic, Marianne, says buyers are very good at hiding their tracks. Sites like Backpage help them do this. The dark web is even more challenging, but it's that focus on the buyers there, Mary. What can be done about that? And in your documentary and your interviews with people for your film, what did people say about that?
Well, I think there's so much that can be done. I think if we look at the analogy, murder for hire, murder my wife, substitute the phrase child sex trafficking with murder, the American people would not stand for it or stand for the crime. And so I think we have to really ask ourselves, why is this permissible? Why can you put up posters and advertise children online?
Advertising is illegal. Someone who places an ad for child sex trafficking is illegal. But you're misrepresenting the U.S. law, ma'am. I'm just saying that.
Elizabeth, we're listening to you. Let me finish my point. My point is, we've got a wild, wild west online. Why is it legal to have real estate online and post pictures of children and be protected for that activity, advertising of children, but you can't rent space in a mall and put up pictures in a mall? It is criminal. So my point is that technology has far outpaced our regulatory system. How would you, Elizabeth, prepare to fix this problem? We need to create incentives for companies around online harm. How would you purport to start that dialogue instead of simply having a knee-jerk reaction to protecting Backpage? We're talking about online harm.
I'm not trying to protect Backpage. I'm trying to protect exploited women and children. Sex workers routinely say that they are harmed because
Elizabeth,
when you drive them off these sites.
Mary asked you a very pointed question.
Yes.
What would be your very pointed response to Mary?
Sorry, what was the question?
You didn't hear that question? It was a very long one. I was like, what do you propose you do?
That's what I was trying. That's what I was trying to answer just now.
Go ahead.
Yes. So first of all, I would not try to drive people onto encrypted sites, onto the dark web, back to street corners and alleys, and get them off of sites where prostitution advertising is in the open, and people can actually, and sites will actually coordinate with law enforcement. I would not try and shut those down and make sex trafficking go deeper underground, because you know what? We talk about helping the victim. What would I do?
Yeah.
First of all, decriminalize prostitution so that police can free up resources to actually focus on bad guys and not consenting adults. I would devote all this money that we're spending on law enforcement and punishing sex workers and arresting them to build shelters for runaway teens, teen-only shelters, emergency shelters, things like that. Give material resources to victims rather than focusing on trying to sue everybody who might possibly.
There are those things.
No, we spend way more money on criminal justice than social.
Yes, and
the 2015.
Hold tight for a moment. Let me just hear
a law that is in place that will protect children online, and that is what we need to do. And I think that
hold tight for a moment. I just want to hear from my mum. Her daughter was trafficked. I want to hear from her.
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Kubiki, you go ahead. I want to hear you.
Anytime that you have to continue saying anything about the First Amendment when we're talking about children, I'm I'm just making a statement, ma'am. Anytime you have to, because you have said this several times, it has nothing to do with the First Amendment. We're only talking about kids being damaged online. And the question is, what would you do for these children that are damaged online? How would you keep them from being damaged online? You talked about resources that are on the outside of the web. Tell me about what is going to be going on on the web that is going to protect these children.
Kibiki, that is just a very strong point to leave us on for now, because we have to take our conversation online. So Kibiki and Brooke and Mary and Elizabeth, we're all going online. This is such a complicated topic, or maybe it isn't. Maybe there's a very simple answer. Hashtag AJStream for you to be part of that conversation, and you will find us at stream.aljazeera.com. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you soon. Hello everybody, welcome back. We're still talking about how children become victims of online self-trafficking, and what do you do about that? Particularly focusing on the US right now because of a documentary that's coming up in February called I Am Jane Doe. Malika, where do you want to start for the post show?
Well, our community is taking us straight to the heart of those who are affected, not wanting to lose the focus on that. This is a tweet we got from Mac, who says sex trafficking survivors go through severe mental and physical abuse. Both medical and financial support is the government's responsibility. There's also someone who has some expert knowledge on what survivors need. This is a comment we got from Gretchen Hunt. Have a listen.
One way to combat child sex trafficking is to ensure that anyone who comes into contact with an at-risk youth treats that child as a victim and not as a juvenile delinquent or a criminal. These youth need to be provided with protective and empowering services so that they can separate from the trafficker, heal from the trafficking, and engage in the criminal justice system. That's why safe harbor laws like the one we passed in Kentucky are so vital to give youth a pathway out of this horrific crime.
Kibiki, Gretchen works for the Kentucky Attorney General in an office that deals specifically with victims, advocating on their behalf. What is it that you and your family faced and felt like you needed more of to support your daughter?
Well, first of all, I didn't know what child trafficking was. So I think that generally there are a lot of people, parents, that do not know about child trafficking and how it can affect their family and the ways that the children can be pulled into this life. And so I think that education is the ground zero, of course. But then when you go further from there, then you're dealing with so many different issues that can't necessarily be fixed. You can talk about all the time about the services that are provided for the victims or that need to be provided for the victims, but it's like a nucleus. The victim is where ground zero is, and then you look at these siblings, and then you look at the parents, and then you look at the neighborhood, and then you look at the shame that goes all the way around. There are so many different factors that keep a lot of these girls and boys, these victims, from being able to move forward with their lives. My daughter suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder. She has a very difficult time connecting with humans, let alone men, let alone women, because she's been damaged on both sides. So what we're dealing with is the long-term psychological damage 8 years later. We're dealing with the fact that she cannot receive Social Security. She's been denied for Social Security, even though she clearly is a damaged, disabled, now adult. She was a victimized child, but now she's a damaged adult. I can also talk about the restitution. Like, she was awarded court-ordered restitution, which she had not received. And so her path to recovery is so dismal because not only is she suffering from the immediate problems, she's suffering from the long-term problems, but then she also can't get any resolve. None of the Johns have been held responsible. The Backpage has not been held responsible. Not that I'm completely blaming them. I'm only saying that when I asked them to remove the pictures of my child, they did not do so. So for me, my problem began there. My problem began with Backpage began there. I was very, very happy to have found my child on this site. However, once you look at the dynamics of how brain-breaking it is to see your child, your baby, in an uncompromised position being advertised for sex in America, I think that the conversation should probably be had of what we can do to stop this from ever happening, to stop this damage, this long-term damage from ever happening again.
What I don't understand is why there's this back and forth, Elizabeth. Why isn't it quite as simple? Once you see like a story like Kubiki's, and there's many stories like this, many stories, a Brooke story, Mary uncovered a lot of stories. Once you see those stories and you talk to the families, why isn't there just, let's get this done? Like this should be straightforward.
Yeah, because of the very reasons she mentioned, though, because it's not straightforward, because it's not about, you know, a specific site or a specific law. It's about a vast array of social and economic factors that lead, you know, people to be exploited, and lead these people to, you know, like runaway teens, things like that, to be in these positions. If Backpage didn't exist, they might be posting ads, or someone might be posting ads for them on Craigslist or another website. They might be out on the streets. It is the problem of poverty and crime and things like that that are the problem, not the venue.
I disagree. What makes you think that it's poverty and
because
crime?
ultimately, we do need to address the core vulnerabilities that allow children to be exploited. At the same time, trying to claim that these websites, particularly Backpage, has no reason to be held accountable when they have been found to edit third-party content to conceal the fact that children,
though, they haven't been
that
found to
children
do that.
are being trafficked on their sites when very specific terminology is being taken out and omitted so that they can pass through and publish these ads. And when you look at the fact that the voice that you're advocating for protecting is ultimately a corporate interest.
No, the voice that I'm advocating for protecting is women and children and people who are in the sex industry.
People who are most vulnerable. The reality is that
I think I know who I'm advocating
technology
for.
rapidly
if you were advocating for children, then we would be talking about changing the 230.
I'm
so
trying
that
to
we can
actually
go ahead
help.
and get
I'm
to
trying to actually look at
we can talk about
policies.
the blanket problem. We said that it's not just Backpage. Okay, so if it's not just Backpage, let's talk about it being everybody, and let's talk about us changing.
So how would you go after everybody on the
everybody.
internet? How would you go after every site on the internet?
Elizabeth, that's actually really easy.
Children for sex.
Okay.
They would be held responsible.
Just to be clear, in 2015,
Elizabeth, let's just hear some of those answers, because I mean, this is why we're all here. We're all here talking about it, and this is for me is the bit that I'm trying to get my head around. But you asked the question, like, how would you go after everybody on the internet? And let Kubiki try and answer that. Kubiki, go ahead. How would you do it?
You would hold everyone that does crimes against children responsible in the same way that if someone transmits child pornography, that they are held responsible regardless of whether they made whether they took the picture of their child or not. They're still held responsible. If you can explain to me that Backpage is not making millions of dollars off of the sale of children, then we can have a different conversation. But if they are, and other websites are going to be doing this, then they should definitely, yes, they are. They made money off of my daughters.
Backpage has gone to court multiple times. Backpage has gone to court multiple times and never been found guilty.
Does that mean that they
under the
didn't do it?
2015 Justice for Victims of Trafficking Act, advertising and victim trafficking is illegal. It is already illegal.
Elizabeth, that's
the law
actually
is not
not
being implemented,
accurate.
and that's the problem.
The challenge is that, again, technology has raced far beyond our regulatory framework. Section 230 provides a full immunity. The First Circuit in Boston with Justice Souter went so far as to say—
For all publishers, not for sex traffickers.
Let me finish, Elizabeth, let me finish. The First Circuit went so far as to say, even if Backpage had participated in a federal criminal offense of child sex trafficking, even if they did that, the case had to be dismissed and Congress must act.
That is inaccurate.
Understand what that means. The First Circuit basically said if Backpage was criminally liable, that the lawsuit that these children have bought cannot stand. I mean, that's extraordinary.
And that's also inaccurate. There's no Yes, child sex trafficking and advertising.
Elizabeth, were you at the hearing?
Yes, I have read all of the documents from it. I have been reporting on this case for years.
Are you a lawyer?
Yes, you were there at the hearing?
No, I said I read the transcripts from the hearing. I've been reporting on all of the cases involving Backpage for years.
So I'm going to jump in here because the central theme still stands, and it's what Kibiki said a little bit earlier, that Backpage made money off of my daughter, end quote. So because of that theme, I want to bring us to this tweet from Jerome, who says, CDA, the Communications Decency Act 230, has to be amended. Websites need to be held accountable. And he references something we've seen a little bit earlier, another industry. He says it's just like the tobacco industry was finally held accountable, so that these websites who know underage victims' lives hang in the balance during these transactions, there is no choice involved, and they'll know that putting juveniles up is not the answer. Brooke, what do you make of that comparison to how the tobacco industry was held accountable? Do you see the same change coming for this industry?
Absolutely. I believe that we, in this time and season, have to create accountability for the fact that there is a rampant marketplace for the buying and selling of children, and no amount of rhetoric claiming that we're defending the free internet or free speech is going to erase the fact that her daughter, my friends, my mentees have been bought and sold on this site. And it's heartbreaking to me to see someone position themselves as an advocate for potential victims, and then to defend the institutions that are accelerating the exploitation of victims at such a rapid rate that they're being forced to be raped for profit by 10, 15 buyers per night.
That is horrible, but I mean, I am trying to stop that also. The but is that I am trying to stop that as well. No one wants that to be happening. But the things you guys are advertising for would not have stopped your daughter from being trafficked, and they won't stop future trafficking victims. In fact, they're a distraction from actually working on solutions that will help victims.
So guys, ladies, this kind of exploitation is no longer normalized, and it is interrupted because the fact is that with this kind of marketplace that is not being regulated, that is not requiring any kind of identity verification, that is not checking for the age of those who are involved, that they are absolutely complicit in making it so easy to turn out a child without any kind of accountability.
Ladies, I'm going to thank all of you because this conversation is not over. Goodness me, I don't even have to tell that to Mary and Kibiki and Brooke and Elizabeth. You've all been working in different ways on this issue for a long time. I'm going to ask us to take this conversation online, to keep going, to keep talking to each other. I hope that after people have seen I Am Jane Doe, after the work that you're doing, Kibiki and Brooke, and actually even Elizabeth, that this will change. This should not even be happening. So thank you very much, guests, for being part of this conversation. Really appreciate your time. Take care.